Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in about 5 minutes or so. So just let's get ready. And as I mentioned, we will be starting with kind of giving you a U.S. real estate market update. And we'll start in about 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Này, ở các nhà lấy những cái Telegram thì ở các nhà startup Telegram.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
How
Everything is good. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Yes, good morning, Mark.
All right, I'm going to give you a 2 minutes warning. 2 minutes warning. All right, good morning, everyone. We will get started. And as I mentioned, we'll get started with a little bit about U.S. real estate market update, especially on the residential side. Then we will move to asking if you have any questions, and we'll start from part of chapter 2 today. So here we go. With the United States, this is the February statistics that's coming out. And when you look at it now, as I mentioned, in the United States, there's usually about 7 to 7.5 million transactions a year. And out of that, about 600,000, 6 million is residential in the residential market, and 6 million is about existing homes, not a new construction, and about 1 to 1.5 million is the new construction. So when looking at it, we're for far as the existing home sales are concerned, we're predicting to be about 6.02 million by end of this year, which is comparing to year about 2.4% lower than last year, and month to month, you'll be about 7.2% lower than our prediction in January. That has to do with there's a lack of inventory, as we call it. Less houses are coming on the market a little bit because of the economy has tightened down a little bit, as you know, with everything, as from war in the Ukraine, the energy crisis, the inflation in US is very high, closer to 7% right now. So there's a lot of factor that's there, but we still see a robust spring market. And when it comes to median price, comparing to last year, this is overall in the United States country, it's about 15% up compared to a February of last year. And we're about 357,000 in the entire US average. And inventory level is now about 1.7 months of inventory. That's all we have. And as I mentioned, the balanced market, we consider as between 4 to 6 months of inventory. So we are way below balanced market, and this becomes a seller's market, meaning that it's very hard for the buyer to find houses. So this will be the basic of that. And I want to go over a couple other statistics as a National Association's Realtor do on existing homes. So these are total sales, as you see on an annual basis. Only time you see that little dip here is when we saw it on 2020 May. That's right after COVID. As you see it, COVID started, it tanked, but it came right back up in 2 months within about June or July of 2020. From there, we maintained right around 6 million all the way through. So that's the annual sales rate. So we were higher than before COVID. Even during the COVID, we are higher. We're average about 5.4 million, but now we're right around averaging 6 million. So it is, our market is very active and no effect of a COVID, not too much effect of a Ukraine war as well, even though it dipped a little bit, but we're still maintaining higher than before COVID percentage. You saw the median price. Median price, let's say 2018 was around $240,000. But now you see at $357,000, you see it almost, over about 30% increase. You see it 30% increase on the average existing home median price in the United States. So our market is doing really well, even if you look back, stretch over to last 4 years. So percentage change over year, even though we probably have the robust year in 2021 with about 24% increase year over year, but now we're settled down to about 15%. So even this year, we are still in double digit of increase comparing to the previous year. So we still, prices are going up still very, very high. And percentage change over years. In 2021, we were up 23%, but comparing to year over year, now we slowed down a little bit. we're comparing, this is year over year. So comparing to the previous year to that, even though we're lower, as you saw it, because as you can remember, we had the very height of the market as far as a price and when the growth is compared. So when you compare to 2021 January and so forth, that we were a little bit below at that, but still a very robust market. It does not mean we're negative. We're still a positive, but it's comparing year over year. And confidence in realtor index is when we look at it, what is increasing? It's very, one thing that we have done really well on February 21 was the first time home buyer market was increasing. But as you saw it in 2022, it's decreasing again. But sales to the investor and second home buyer increased a little bit compared to year over year. But cash sales again is beginning to increase as well. Distressed sales, which mean the bank foreclosure and so forth, is remain very low. And days on the market, you saw it, it's only 18 days on the market in annual basis in United States. So these are when you look at it, where are most of the existing home sales happening? You have the South, West, Northeast, and Midwest. This hasn't changed that much. And when we look at existing home sales by price range, most of the prices in the United States are between 25 and 500,000, which is a big increase. And you can see that again, still 500, 715,000 is 16.8%. And we do some parts of the United States have house prices which are between 100 and 250,000. But when you look at it, see year over year on the price range, a house under 100,000 and the 250,000, you see the price number of transactions has decreased. Why? Because we have a lot less houses that are under 250,000, and 250, 500,000 only has increased. So one of the biggest increase you see is 500 to 750,000, 700 to 1 million. Even in my market, we just made an adjustment. We used to consider a high-end market, a 600,000 in my market that I have in the south of Seattle. But we made, our office made an adjustment that high-end market is about 750,000 and above is considered as a high-end market in my area. But if you're in the Seattle area, high-end market is considered probably over 2 million because most of the average prices are very high. And I just want to share you a little bit about my market in the Seattle market in the King County. And I want to share you with that. Let me get that statistics out. Okay. Here is the statistics for King County, which is where the Seattle is. Very similar things. When you saw it here, our median sales price is 865,000. And last year was 759,000. So it's over 14% increase on the average median price. You saw the average price here is over 1 million. And percent of the list price received, the houses are selling over 110% over asking price. You see the inventory in our area in Seattle is only 0.3%. So when we look at it, even my market is a lot harder than the market in average in United States. Any questions? Everybody's okay?
Hi, Mark. I am Sumit. I have a question. It is a little bit. Like you saw in the graph that still in COVID pandemic in US and in Europe, that is got the big impact, very bad impact from the pandemic. But why it is still increased? Well, what is the reason that first buyer or second buyer that United States, American still buy the property and what is
Because
the
right now, United States' economy has no direct effect from the Ukraine right now. A little bit on the inflation was happening way before the Ukraine started. And only big hit, even that, we talk about increase of the fuel, like a gasoline and so forth. That was starting before even Ukraine was started. So that has not affected. And a couple of things. Number one, we still have a very low interest rate overall of the buying houses. We're right around 3%. It might be high compared to a lot of places, but America, the highest time, and probably 15 years ago, the interest rate was around 9%. And because when I started real estate was 2020, and that was a time when the interest rate went from double digit about under 10% for first time. They kept going down. We were down as far as a maybe 2.5%, but we're back at 3%, but interest rate is still very low. And overall employment is good. I know some parts of our population has been hurting after the COVID, a lot of the small business owners and so forth, but overall our economy is pretty healthy. And one thing that we're trying to do is scale down the inflation. So that's one of the reasons most people are still buying.
Yeah.
And we have no direct effect from the Ukraine.
Okay, Mike, thank you for your meaningful explanation. But to your perspective, for us as a professional, as an agent in Cambodia, we are in the COVID-19 period as well, even though it's more safer than the other Asian country in the Southeast Asia, and a little bit impact from the Ukraine war. Yeah. So, what is your advice to us? How we can increase our sales, especially sell to the local people, because international buyer, Chinese, especially Chinese, they cannot come to Cambodia.
Right.
Yeah. So what is your idea? What factor that we can use it to play? We use price to play it, or we use what?
Yeah. One of the things that we cannot do as a real estate agent is control the market, right? Market is dictated right now, especially people are more sensitive about the market and everything else because the availability of the internet, people gets all kinds of information on it. And I think our job is to really understand the market and let them know how the market is. But one thing about when you look at an investment, real estate, no matter where it is, the real estate is still one of the most safest investment you have because it will never become zero. Right? If you invest in let's say a startup company, venture, they could go to zero if they lose money or they're not successful, or even stock market, it could become zero. But real estate, unless there's a political, movement in some of the country, going back to more communist regime or something, the real estate is one thing is the most safest investment that you have. And still, as you could see it, United States is one of the most safest real estate investment that you could have in the entire world. Of course, there are other places that you can make a lot of money in the short term, but when you look at real estate, you want to look at real estate as a investment to mid to long-term investment. People should never look at real estate as a short-term investment. That's when a lot of people get hurt. So that'll be my advice when you talk to them. The real estate is still one of the safest. If you look at the mid to long-term investment, again, real estate is one of the most safest in any type of investment. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anybody else have any other question on U.S. real estate? Remember, I don't use a chat room while you're doing, so just speak out if you have any question. If it's not, we will move forward with our lesson and finish off today. All right, we are starting from page 49. yesterday we studied about items and so forth. So what is important? To educate the buyer. We talk about establishing the price point, right? So let's move on and talk about educating the buyer. The two purposes to educating the buyer. This is starting on page 50 to 51. You display knowledge and expertise, and educate the buyer has more realistic expectation. Its most important part right now is to set the expectation of your buyer how the market is. That could avoid many different cases or headaches. So this is what I do, and I'm going to share this with you on the Zoom chat room as well. So right now, I have this special sheet that I created to kind of educate the buyer on the market condition that we have. So I kind of use a very easy bullet point, and I try to update this at least once a month if there's big changes. So on this one, just looking at my market, I put it in market condition. Other than the statistics that I could share with you like I did with you, I said it is an extreme seller's market, very low inventory. Most of our area has less than 1 month inventory, and balanced market is considered as between 4 to 6 months of inventory. This sets expectation to how low our inventory is. And as you saw it, our market is actually 0.3 months, which means what? 10 days of inventory. That's all we have. More inventory in the spring, early summer now, but more buyer competition, but not enough to get even closer to balanced market. Doesn't matter, even the more inventory comes up, more buyer comes up, so inventory level will still be continue to be very low. And home goes under contract within few days, meaning that it only takes few days. So you have to act ready. As a buyer, you have to be ready to make the decision. Most of new listing comes on the market right now in our market, Wednesday or Thursday. Then offer review date deadline is set by the seller, usually for following Monday or Tuesday. But seller can accept any offer prior to offer review date if they choose to. Meaning that they let it go through the weekend, so people have open house and so forth, and they pick and choose which offer to take. Right now, there most likely will be multiple offers made to the property that you like. There's always going to be competition. Right now, we're averaging about 3 to 5 offers per property. Last year, about the same time, we're looking about 10 offers. So competition is a little bit better, less competition. Good potential of sales price going higher than listed price. Remember, you saw that you're going about 10% higher than the market price. Must have a pre-approval letter or proof of funding to make an offer. You have to be ready. Remember, we talked about the financing. We have to be ready to go. And we have consideration, we use our escalation clause, that's the way that we escalate the price based on the competing price, or we use additional down payment. If you're getting a loan, might consider give a higher down payment, or, again, see attached monthly county statistics, which I include. I show you the King County one. And guidelines to remember as you search houses. Think about monthly payment, not the interest rate. What makes very important is how much money goes out of your pocket each month for mortgage or the house loan is most important part. List out the separate needs and wants. Remember, we talked about the needs and wants yesterday as well. And there is no perfect house. And think about what is most dollar you are willing to pay for this house. That's what you should think about. And final thought will be you must be ready to react quickly if you find the right house. That means we have to be ready to go. But at the same time, you have to have a patience, because you might have to many offers before you offer gets accepted. So this is a sheet that I provide to my buyer as well. So my thought is create one for your market. It might be different on your market, right? So it's not your market, but I will share this with you. On that as well. And another form that I'm going to be sharing with you will be, but not this one. Sorry about that. Sample buyer agency agreement that my MLS uses, forms that our company and our MLS uses. I'm just going to share this with you. I know that it doesn't really apply to you, but we'll talk more about this buyer agency agreement a little bit later as well as part of our today's lesson. So I will share with you this buyer agency agreement. Okay. Any questions so far? All right.
Mark, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I have a little bit of question related to condo. You may know in Cambodia, condo is not famous, and because some people still reject that product because of the price and because of it spending every month management fee and parking and something like that. And especially the space, because most of Cambodian people in history, they used to have a very big land, a very big house for their family, and it is a family too. Everyone live together, but in condo, very limited to the member, just to one partner or just one married with one child, so on. So can you give us some tip that can exact from United States, US history, how to educate people effectively, and so what is the tool that we can do, or any specific, I need any specific tool or any specific mechanism that can give the audience, especially local people, because local people now they have a power to buy, they have money now in their hand, but the reason they don't want to buy it. So I want to hear from you now. Thank you.
So when I deal with a condo, number one, what's the purpose of buying condominium? Okay, number one, cost is cheaper, usually purchase price is cheaper, but overall cost might not necessarily cheaper. It depends on what is your monthly management fee is, because depends on what management fee is. Of course, the amenity that condo offers makes a difference on the management fee. So in the United States, I have them calculated out their monthly mortgage payment and plus the management fee is what it goes out monthly. So I have them compare that comparing to owning a house, because even with a condominium, you do still have to pay property tax, like in United States, same thing. So, but it is actually condominium, in my opinion, is number one, it might be cheaper to start out, but when you start including the monthly fee, it might be sometimes very close to what your monthly payment is for buying a house. And number two is people choosing condo is what biggest reason is its lifestyle. Definitely it's the lifestyle. In the United States, we talk about the lifestyle. Some people don't want yard anymore. Or some people don't have any more kids and they don't want to take care of everything. Because a lot of times, you know, outside of the building, it's taken care of by management usually in a condominium situation. When you own your own home, you have to take care of everything. So some people say, hey, I am willing to pay extra large management fee so that I don't have to take care of those things. Or maybe they offer amenities that they like, maybe an exercise room or party room or swimming pool and gym, exercise room and things like that. So it's a lot of times it's a lifestyle. And that's the choice that people will have to make. And it's not your choice that you're going to make. One thing about being a buyer agent is you're not trying to sell something. You assisting the buyer to purchase what they really want to purchase. Our job is to guide them and give them information. That is the big difference between buyer's agent and listing agent. Seller's agent have something that they have to sell. So that's one thing that you have to remember and you have to differentiate as you work as a buyer's agent versus listing agent. In Cambodia, that maybe it is a new concept to have a buyer agency because like most of you said, there is no buyer agent in Cambodia. But maybe that's something that you're going to have to create. And I said, it's an opportunity in the market to create. And we talk about this, right? Local real estate market. I compare with you the local real estate market and national market. I go through very similar presentation that I did with my clients as well. And somebody has their hands up. Just unmute and speak. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mark. You hear me? I'm from G1 Academy with the Brazilian group. Actually, I've been pondering on the concept of buyer agency. I really believe that it could be a great opportunity in Cambodia, and I hope you'll explain here and there, and the whole course will cover everything. But if it's possible, if you can share a bit more about the background, how it comes to, because I believe that even if it's in the United States, it's not compulsory, right? It's out there, if buyers want to find agent, they can go to any buyer agent that they like, that they can work with, right? So how can that enter the market? I mean, that kind of concept, in the first place, and how people start.
So yeah, here is the main concept of buyer agents agreement. Let's talk about lawsuit. Okay, in a court, you have attorneys for the plaintiff, right? You have a separate attorney for both sides, doesn't it? Right? How can you have one attorney represent both sides? Think about that. That doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
The real estate transaction is the same thing. How could one person really represent both sides to best their ability without compromising that each necessity? In the United States, like I said, only about less than 3% is done dual agency. Less than 3% of transactions done dual agency, meaning that one agent representing both seller and a buyer. And having your own agent, of course, is very concept that's been around. Even until about, let's say, before, even our law was different. In state of Washington, until 1996, there was no buyer agent per se by law, because their concept was, you know what? We are the agent for whoever pays me, right? In Cambodia or even the United States, most of the buyer agent fee is paid by the seller when the house sells. So we should be loyal to whoever pays me. That was a concept. But, you know, and that's still logically, yeah. But at the end of the day, what is the protection as a consumer protection? So this is a law, or this is something that we need to think about. When in the United States, a lot of places still, seller still pays the buyer's commission, but still, most of the state established a licensing law that yes, you can do a both side, but they introduce into a law a buyer agency concept into that. And what I'll do is after this break, I'll pull up our agency law pamphlet on the English, what Washington State, this is a government telling us what our law is about agent in general, listing agent, buyer agent. They created a law in 1996 to separate two people. And what you could do as a buyer agent, what you should do as a listing agent, and what you can and cannot do when you're a dual agent, meaning representing both sides. So yeah, it is a new concept of Cambodia, but you guys are the first group of the people, you know, about 100 of us who's joining today, is basically your first things. You guys could change the market. And maybe that's just something as an association that you work towards. This is a protection of consumer. And that's the whole concept of buyer agency agreement. And also it's a protection of you as well. You know, Asia is a little bit different. In America, if something goes, everybody sue. They file a lawsuit. So our job is to protect ourselves as well. So we'll continue on with that. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're right. I mean, the thinking at the moment, the buyers in Cambodia, they think that, you know, it's the seller should pay the agent, whoever it is, the agent.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it would be, we would need a lot of education for people to change, you know, that kind of thinking.
Yeah. But I don't think any buyer has objection having on their agent. You know, only objection is who is going to pay for it, right? But think about it.
Yeah.
When you hiring a professional, right? Let's say you're hiring attorney, lawyer. You don't ask the other side to pay you, right? You're going to pay your own lawyer, right? So that's the concept of the realtor or real estate agent being professional. Like I said, I have a minimum amount that I need to get paid in United States in order to work with somebody. Even with a buyer agent. Like I said, some of my buyer has paid me because the seller is not willing to pay because it was not listed on the property. You knock on the door and ask them to sell us the home. But those are the times I ask the buyer to pay me, and they understand that. Because they rather have somebody representing them that's professional, right?
Yes, thank you.
So that's the concept, yeah, right?
Two very good point, consumer protection and the concept of, you know, lawyering.
Yeah, or even doctor.
Very
right?
Strong, yeah.
Right, as a buyer, if you're a patient, would you willing to do your own surgery? No, right? You're going to hire a profession to do it. But anyway, yeah, you are going to learn, and it is a new concept for Cambodia. Yeah, we'll continue on, and hopefully you learn a little bit more for next, 3 days that we have left to continue to, to think about the concept. So compare the national statistics with your local statistic, which I did, right? We'll talk about these are some of the statistics, median price and so forth, and know your local market. And this might be a very different concept. It depends on what part of the world you are in. In the United States, we have a local fair housing law, which you cannot discriminate people from buying. You cannot discriminate based on race, color, religion, sex, disability, national origin, or familiar status of individual in the neighborhood or building. This is a national fair housing law, but each state have more areas that you cannot discriminate. Instead of Washington, age is included. That's including for renting and selling. You cannot say, we don't want to rent it to a family. Or we cannot say we don't want to rent it to people over age of 50 or 60, it might be. We cannot do that. That's against the law. And as a seller, you cannot say, or the landlord, you cannot say, I don't want to rent it to somebody. So you need to educate clients about fair housing consideration. This is one of those things. It might not be still there in many of our Asian countries. You are still able to discriminate based on some of the things, even age, sex, maybe male or female, or transgender, or whatever it might be. In the United States, you cannot discriminate based on that. But that should be considered at the rest of the world as well. Doesn't mean the US is perfect, because we still have a problem with these as well. Some people say, I don't want to rent it to Asian people, or I don't want to rent it to African-American Black people. They're not even American, they're American Black people. Things like that. Or I don't want to rent it to foreign people because I don't like Chinese. Or I don't want to rent it now. People are, even in some countries says, I don't want to rent it to a Russian because of the war in Ukraine. We can't do that in the United States. But I know even in Japan and a lot of the Asian countries, very still discriminatory. That's something that we all have to look at, whether it's a law or as a practice as a real estate agent. Main thing that you should be considering when you're renting or selling is their financial ability to close the transaction or financial ability to be able to pay the rent. Right? But of course, that's one of the reasons why US does not have any foreign ownership restriction. And many countries in Asia, in Europe, and so forth still have a restriction against the foreign people. But in the United States, you cannot. It's against the law. That's why national origin, right? And again, remember, this is one of the things that you have to understand is the complete cost of home ownership. Educating your buyer on big picture cost of home ownership. That helps buyer make the informed decision, reinforces the value of buyer representation, strengthen your relationship with your buyer, client, win buyer, clients respect and loyalty. What is the complete cost of homeowner ownership? Right? We talked about the property taxes or maintenance costs. As a homeowner, no one maintains your house. Now it's your cost. There are costs for being both. And maybe some of the, comparing to renting, maybe some of the utilities might not be included anymore. Like in the United States, many of the buildings, when you like high-rise condominium and so forth, a lot of times water and sewer is included. But when you own your own home, that might be included. Some of the HOA, when you say condominium, that might be so included. So when someone asking, how do you do that? You want to make sure that you understand, that you be able to explain, to compare the cost of home ownership versus renting, cost of owning your single family home versus maybe a condominium with a management fee. Because management fee might include something that doesn't include it in a homeowner, such as in like United States, maybe garbage, trash collection, water, sewer, etc., etc. But understanding that you're able to explain that to them, to the buyer, standing on the buyer side, representing buyer, it's going to give you a big trust. And remember, at the end of the day, the buyer becomes the seller and buyer becomes a referral. Buyers, if they like your service, they are going to tell other people. That's how you could gain more business. So on page 52, it talks a little bit about what consultation session looks like. These are some of the questions that you're going to ask. So keep that page and study that. What kind of things you should be asking if you're working with a buyer. So remember, working as a buyer's agent, this is going on to page 53 and 54. You have a choice to work with a buyer or not. Yeah, buyer might choose you, but you might choose the buyer, which buyer to work for and not to work for. You don't want to work with some of the warning signs because if there's an issue, they will drain your time and your resources, and you get more stress. Unmotivated buyer. They're not really ready to buy. And they keep saying, no, I really don't want to rush things. And never seems ready to make a real offer. Or even reluctant to sign buyer agency agreement. Like I said, I don't work with any buyer who doesn't want to sign buyer agency agreement. Buyer agency agreement is my commitment to them and their commitment to me as well. Potentially unqualified. They don't want to go a step further and get a loan or go through the loan process to be ready to buy. Or they really don't have enough cash. Unrealistic, meaning the house that they want is not a realistically, it doesn't exist. They're looking for the perfect property, which does not exist. Or unrealistic, meaning that they still want to keep bargaining in my seller's market. Right now, you're not going to pick up a property under listed price usually. And they're not willing to pay anything over. They only want to willing to pay lower than listed price. That's a very unrealistic. How about inconsiderate? They're inconsiderate about your time. They miss appointment. They keep canceling appointments and things like that. Or they don't follow advice. They don't even listen to you. Maybe those are people you don't want to work with. And questionable loyalty. We talked about that. Looks like, this buyer's trying to work with 3-4 different buyer agents. In the United States, we all have the same information through MLS. It might be a little bit different in the market. There's no MLS. You might have to work with 3 or 4 different agents to find the right house, but not in the United States. Or they're asking you to perform unlawful act. Something that's illegal. And potential conflict of interest. For me, conflict of interest is for the buyer. If they want to buy the property that I have listed, that I consider as a conflict of interest. So I said, like I said, I'll give that buyer to my team member to take care only for this transaction. If this doesn't go, then I get the buyer back and I continue to work with them. Well, one of the things that you have to remember is keep safety in mind. This is where you trust your gut. If you feel unsafe, don't work them. Trust your instinct. Use a personal safety plan every day or every client. So what are some of the safety things that I do as a buyer's agent? I usually try to get to the property that I want to show a little bit before the buyer arrives. I turn all the lights in the house. In the United States, most of the time, seller is not home when we're selling the house. And I let the seller lead through the buyer lead through the house when they walk around the house. And I always try to stay closer to the door so that I could run in case something happens. In United States, unfortunately, there's usually over 10 realtors who gets killed during showings. Over more than 1,000 cases every year in the United States, the real estate agent gets attacked. So safety is a very, very important matter in the United States as well, but should be for everybody, because a lot of times buyers are strangers. You don't know who the buyer is, right? And sometimes you might have to get out. You might have to end the relationship. But do it so without burning bridges. Be civil. Because usually, emotionally, some of us get along really well. And some of us we just don't get along well, not because they're bad and you're bad, or they're bad only. It's just not personality-wise, we don't click. And you know those. They might be a good say, you know what? I'd rather give that to somebody and pick up a referral fee from that agent than try to go through it and struggle through it, because it'd be very hard. And these are some of the ways it looks like you need more time to think through your decision because they're not ready, right? Let's put things on hold for a while and we gather. And you use it if you're not clicking, says, I am sorry that I might not be meeting your needs. It is probably the best you to work with someone else. Someone else could be somebody in the office, or you could refer to them, especially if they're not a bad agent. Bad buyer. If they're a very bad buyer asking unlawful things and they're mean buyers, you might not want to refer that buyer to somebody in the office, right? The other agent might get mad at you for referring them. So think about that as well. And rental, I know some of you are doing a lot of property management as well. Remember, all your renters can be tomorrow's buyer. And why are they renting? Maybe they experience a distressed property sales. Maybe they're saving for down payment. Maybe they have a bad credit, so they have to repair their credit, meaning that they might owe a lot of money. And they might not get a loan for other reasons. So that might be something that you want to look at. See what's available. Pledgeable performance. You have it in here. And once you get ABR, then you will get this. You're able to download this part. Right? This is listed on page 55 and 56. Maybe this is something that you read and you may be translated into Cambodian to give it to your buyer client with that. So, 4 contracts that you need to know. There is a listing agreement, there's a buyer representation agreement, offer of a compensation agreement, and there's a sales contract. And you're definitely familiar with the listing agreement and sales contract. Maybe not with a buyer representation agreement, which I gave to you on the chat room. So you could download that and you could look at that as well. I am not going to go into very detail on the buyer representation agreement, but you could use that as possibly you could probably start using this somewhat. Is it exclusive or non-exclusive? I only do exclusive. Unless geographically they might be looking 3 different places, I only cover 1 places, then it might be geographically, I put a exclusive for that geographically. Maybe consider with a price, property area, duration, protection period, what kind of services you do, what kind of compensation you request. You always have a consent to show properties to other buyers. Can you show same property to different buyers? Yes. Well, you may, if you got 2 buyers wants to make an offer on the 1 house in the United States, you can only represent 1 party. If 2 of your buyer wants to make an offer on 1 house, then you have to have somebody help you for other buyer to make an offer. Is it dual or designated agencies? Is it non-discrimination? Assignment by the buyer. How do you cancel it? And so forth. Those are all listed in page 58 through 59, 57 through 59. When buyer won't sign, what can you do? Change it to very short term, meaning the time frame, or non-exclusive agreement, or you do a trial basis, specific area, or you permit buyer to cancel if it doesn't work, or you offer a certain guarantee. Is a written buyer representation agreement necessary? Some states, like I say, yes, in the United States, some states you have to have one. You have to understand your law in the state. But of course, in Cambodia, there's not a buyer agency interpretation. Compensation. What does that mean? How you get paid, you explain to the buyer. For me, is whenever I work with a buyer, I explain how I get paid. In the United States, I explain to you as a buyer agent, the part of the commission, if you decide to purchase certain house, each house has a percentage of commission that goes to the buyer's agent. From the buyer's agent in my office, you split with the office take half, and I keep the half. From there, I pay all my expenses, driving around, gas, maybe treating you to lunch, and everything else gets paid through that. And I explain to them how much I get paid or how I get paid on every single transaction. It is always better to understand and let them know how you get paid, because a lot of people have a myth, meaning that they think you get paid a lot more than what you think you're going to get paid. Because a lot of people think real estate agent makes so much money. That's one of the bad reputation that we have, that we shouldn't deserve the pay that we get paid because you get paid too much. Who pays for buyer representation compensation? You need to let them know. Buyer ultimately pays the buyer representative fees. Why? Because they purchase certain homes. Unless they purchase certain home, you don't get paid. This helps you to focus on your commitment to your buyer client. How are compensation dealt written into contracts? Maybe you have a buyer agency agreement, or there might be contract that's written in. Depends on what kind of contract form that you have. What are some different compensation options? Percentage of the sales, flat fee, hourly rate combination. You might retain money for refundable, non-refundable. That's something that I think we really have to think about it. In Cambodia, what works the best? Maybe it's a flat fee. Or maybe you have a different fee for doing a buyer consultation. I think you're allowed to charge. Maybe you say flat fee once you purchase the house, and part of the fee is going to be how much when you purchase the house. Maybe that may be percentage of flat fees. For right now, for me, is a minimum fee that I need to receive as a buyer agency till last year was $3,500, $3,500. But usually the commission that I get, the percentage of the commission I get from the sales price from the seller supersedes that amount. Right now, like you saw the medium sales price is about 600,000, and the commission rate that I usually get, there's no set fees, usually get is between 2.5% to 3%. So, you can make about $18,000 per sale. And $3,500, and I have actually upped the date rate to that to $4,000 this year. That's the minimum fee that I have to receive. If I'm not receiving $4,000 from the seller, that a buyer agreed to pay me the difference or the $4,000. Because really think about it, having an expert help you to buy a $500,000 property. What's the cost? $4,000, a very cheap cost. Especially when you are able to sell the value that you have as a buyer's agent or as a real estate agent. What is the ethical standards related to compensation? Comes to it. Realtors talks about Realtor must abide by the code of ethics and standards of practice in all transactions to clients, customer, seller, and their agent, other professional. What are some of the things that you talk about the compensation? Article 16 is not intended to prohibit aggressive or innovative business practices which are otherwise ethical, and does not prohibit a disagreement with the other realtor involving commission fees or compensation or other forms of payment. They all have a different practices. Standard practice -31 that says, realtor acting as exclusive agent or brokers of seller, landlord establish the terms and the condition of offer to cooperate. Unless expressly indicated in offer to cooperate, cooperating broker may not assume the offer of compensation includes an offer of compensation. The term of compensation, if any, shall be asserted by cooperating broker before beginning efforts to accept the offer of compensation, cooperation. In other words, buyer and the seller have to understand What is the commission like before you start the transaction itself? Realtor may represent the seller, landlord, buyer, tenant in the same transaction only after full disclosure to and with informed consent of both parties. When you do in the United States, whether it's a law or not, when you are doing dual agent, meaning represent buyer and the seller, you have to get consent from both parties that you're going to be acting as a dual agent for the buyer and seller on the same time. Standard practice 16-6. Realtor acting as a subagent or buyer, tenant, representative, or broker shall not use the terms of an offer to purchase, lease, to attempt to modify the listing broker's offer of compensation. The compensation in the United States is usually done by the seller, indicates what the compensation, the listing on the listing, meaning on the information on the listing shows you how much money you get paid. What if the offer of compensation is less than what is required? Again, this is when we talk about it. You ask the buyer to pay. What happened after the compensation more than what is required should be addressed in your buyer agreement. Must disclose to the buyer if making more than what is buyer represent agreement can be addressed in buyer rep agreement to provide for a range of acceptable compensation. I just say minimum compensation shall be $4,000, period. If I receive more compensation, then that I have a right to receive the compensation. We don't have to worry about this because we don't really have, Cambodia doesn't have MLS. And I think the concept of buyer agency is not quite there yet, but maybe it's going to be a new practice. Now you might talk to your seller. That could be changed from the seller side. Says, you know what? To open up more potential, we're going to open it up outside of our office or outside of myself receiving. If somebody brings a client and they're representing, we'll pay them, whatever. 0.5% or whatever. But it should be in writing. Feasible means for sale by owner. How does that work? I have the minimum commission. I always negotiate. With that for sale by owner, if they want to pay commission. If they're not, then I get money from the buyer side. You don't have to worry about VA buyers, so I'm going to skip that part. Is written buyer is a representation agreement necessary to receive a compensation? Just depends. If there's no buyer agent agreement, it's going to be very hard to try to get the money from them. And I think it listed on the page 70 why reason to sign buyer representation agreement. Might not apply to Cambodia yet, but we'll look at it. So key points to review for module 2. Both the agent and the buyer seeks the right relationship to facilitate the home purchases. Buyer consultation involves asking questions, answering questions, and informing the buyer about the process. Creating brand consistency builds successful real estate professionals. Remember, we're talking about creating our own brand. The buyer representation agreement lays the foundation for buyer loyalty and compensation. All right, this is end of module 2. So let's take our 10-minute break. And if you think about questions, we'll have a question time before we start next one. So let's take our 10-minute break. We'll come back right around 8:15, that's PM my time, so it'd be about 10:20. your time, AM. So let's take our break right now. Okay, thank you, everyone. All right. Any question from chapter 2? Anybody has any question from chapter 2? Everybody's okay?
Yes, it is okay, Mark.
Okay, all right. So let's move to chapter 3, module 3, which is starting on page 73. Learning objective for module 3 is identify way to manage buyer's expectation by using active listening strategies and creating a home buyer checklist. Show properties in a manner that represents clients with the best opportunity to view the properties and purchase the desired properties. And you have to follow the federal, state, and local fair housing law. We talk about the fair housing a little bit when selecting and showing the properties. Searching for properties. This is, again, managing the expectation is very, very important. And focus on clients' priorities, high and low for the home search, whatever it might be different for all of them. And educate them on the market realities, right? And at the same time, you want to reaffirm your services that you offer. What you set the expectation, what you could do and what you cannot do. And that becomes important as well. You see the home buyer checklist. You see that on page 75. And some of the things you could create your own by using this, what buyer wants. Searching for properties. The most important part is listen to your client. Don't just listen. It's active listening. You got to pay attention to what buyers are saying, even the conversation the buyers having with each other. You know, maybe husband and a wife, partner, whoever it might be within the family. Pay attention to that. Then don't judge them on what they're saying from the beginning. You want to reflect what clients are saying. What does that reflect meaning? Client. When their client are asking, you reflect on them. Well, I'm looking for 3-bedroom house. I say, okay, you're looking for 3-bedroom house, but why do you need a 3-bedroom house? Why need a 4-bedroom? Ask the question. And clarify the same thing, what was said. Ask question. If you did not understand what the buyer's saying or your client's saying, ask questions. Hey, it might be a long relationship, so you want to check in once in a while. right? You go out one showing, they don't just let it go. Check in periodically. Buyer's packet. What goes into buyer's packet? I show you some of the things that goes into my buyer's pocket already, right? Welcome letter, list of services you offer, realtor pledge of a performance, advantage of working with a buyer's representative, info on mortgage pre-approval process, checklist of activities in home buying process. Remember, we gave you that booklet. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to load one more documents here for the day. And this is just a sample only, it might not apply to you. And this is called 12 steps of buying a home. There's a 12 steps of buying a home. So I made these 12 steps, how the entire process work. And this might be something that you might be able to create. Even if you don't have a buyer agency situation, if you create this for the buyer, they might appreciate you as well. You can make a difference than not having. So they understand on the paper what happens in the transaction. Right? So that's loaded into chat room for your sample. List of common terms, testimonials, fair housing statement, your business card, etc. Those are some of the things that could go on to a packet. I think you should create a buyer packet, even though there's no buyer representation. So the buyer feel more comfortable working with you, at least, even though you might be representing the listing agent. They feel like you're helping them as well by providing some of these informations. So in page 80, this might be a little bit of a different concept where you could find the houses, because there's no buyer representations or buyer agency concept in Cambodia. It might be a little bit different, but a lot of them could be for sale by owner, right? You hear that somebody's want to sell, so you're going to represent the seller, but you're going to tell the buyer there's a house for you. This is still there. Make productive contact with the seller. Inform seller, your agent, with a qualified buyer. Assure seller that you are not looking to list the house. I said, I have a buyer. That's why I want to connect both of you. Ask if seller is working with someone and if price includes commission or not. If your client's compensating you, you don't mention fee to the seller. If the buyer is willing to pay you, then you don't mention the commission to the seller. Realtor property resources. This is for resources for only for in United States properties, of course, but you as an international realtor member, you have access to Realtor property resource. This is only member benefit for members with the National Association of Realtors. RPR could create a reports, view online or create a report or download on almost all the properties in the United States, including residential and commercial. You could generate a full color report with your contact information and brand in the minutes to email or present to your client. So if you're working with a foreign buyer, even the clients in Cambodia that wants to buy property in the United States, you could create a report for certain properties or certain areas. That's a big advantage if you're working with a client who wants to invest in the United States. You're able to do that before you're even connecting with a buyer, with connecting with the agent in United States. So when you become part of the ABR network or CIPS network, don't just say, I need the agent in California. California is very big, or Washington. Make sure you specify the city at least, which cities that you're looking for, right? Okay. Because I have a 2 main I see on the our group Facebook that says, I need the agents in California. But California is very big. Just like somebody saying, I need an agent in Cambodia, right? There's other, Cambodia is not just Phnom Penh. There's other parts of it too. So we need to know that. So just be careful when you're asking for finding an agent in other area that you do that.
Hi, Mark.
Go ahead.
Mark, can you move back a little bit? I want to ask some abbreviation. Another one.
Physical?
Yeah.
This one?
FSBO. What is that? FSBO opportunity.
FSBO means for sale by owner.
Oh, for sale by
owner.
For sale
So
by
owner
owner.
is, yeah, owner, it's not on the market. Owner doesn't have any representation, so forth. FSBO is a for sale by owner. Sorry about that. For sale by owner.
Okay. For sale by owner. Thank you.
Any other question, anybody? Everybody's okay?
Yes, Mark, just very quick. I sent it in the chat also. The pages that you refer to in the slide presentation is different from the guide that we got. So probably it's a different version. So,
Okay.
for example, searching for properties, actively listen to client. On the guide that we got, it's on page 16. And you refer to in the slide, it's a page like 76, if I'm not wrong. But anyway, it's not a big deal. Just
okay. Well, what pages yours booklet have? Maybe you have the old, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe it's an older version.
Yeah. Hopefully you got the newer version. I hope. Or we'll have them print a new version as well. This was
version 4 that we got.
Okay, you should be version 5.
That's fine. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I'll do is I'll send it to the valuation them to version 5. So you might be, I'll do that tonight. So you'll have it for at least next week. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll do it on the next break to the to the office. Then they could send that out to you. Let me see if I could load it on the chat. It might be too big, but let me try. Okay, just give me 1 second. Thank you for letting me know that now. Thank you. It's a little bit big, but it is loaded onto chat room. It's about 7 megabytes. Okay. Good. Thank you for letting me know that. All right, so we'll go back. And on there, it says the Realtor valuation method. It's called AVM, Automated Valuation Method. And it only available for your MLS participated share data. This is only applies to US markets, so you don't really have to worry about it. But at least RPR has the valuation, automatic valuation that they use. but you do have a legal and ethical obligation to share information responsibly. Know who you are sharing information with, know why you are sharing information with. A lot of these information. So these are a lot of prep things where you could find houses. But understanding what buyer wants is a key part of when you are finding houses for your client. So let's go in a little bit to showing a property. Before you're showing a property, a couple of things that you want to remember, right? Provide a complete copy of home buyer's checklist. Give them the checklist so they could check. You want to at least give the list of the properties that you're going to show. And you might want to give a sample purchase and sales agreement. This is what sales contracts looks like, so they understand before they make any offer, or offer sheet if you have one. And when you're showing multiple property, make sure you plan on rest stops. And maybe sometimes if you're driving them around, you might want to provide snacks. So in my car, I always have a bottle of water for my clients and also some snacks for my clients, especially when they're bringing kids and so forth. So I have like a snacks for kids and so forth as well. But I usually encourage, at least in the beginning, to have the kids stay home when you go to the child care with a grandmother or grandkids or something. Leave and pets and kids at home. Of course, some clients do use a service animal which they need to move around, and that's different. But I usually ask to keep the pets and kids at home, especially little kids. You might want to review expectation for appropriate behavior, especially during COVID. We had a special procedure that was mandated by state what we needed to do. And during certain time of the COVID, we could only have like 3 people in the house at a time. That's including agent and 2 more people. At that time, you cannot bring a whole family. If they do, they have to wait outside and take turn to go inside the house. And we as a real estate agent, we have to wipe down everything with a sanitizer, or we have to wear a shoes cover and things like that. Or we have to, of course, wear a mask. So those are check COVID protocols. We put that on there. Right now in the United States, everything is lifted. Wearing a mask inside or outside is a option. It's not a mandatory anywhere in my state anymore. And also let them know the appointment time is very important. Because right now, because this hot market, usually our appointments are in 30 minutes increment. There's people after. So if you're late, and you only have a time that you reserve, usually it's 30 minutes they allow you to do, it's 9 o'clock to 9:30. If they don't show up time, we might not have enough time to see the whole thing because you have a 9:30 appointment that somebody else has. Or we have an appointment at the other house, second house at 9:30 or 9:45 and so forth. And make sure before you set a time after showing to kind of discuss what you saw and review it. And that's very, very important when you are, and these are the things that needs to be think about before you're showing the house to your client as a buyer agent. How about during? Right, arrive on time, follow COVID protocol, Even though the house might say vacant, you might want to ring the doorbell and make sure you're announced that you're arrived. And a lot of times, you know, if the seller might be home, then you might make sure you ring the doorbell. Wear slip-on shoes. So it's easy for you to take it off, take it on, or you'll use the shoes cover. But, you know, a lot of Asia, we're very accustomed to taking the shoes off at the entrance, so that might not be a big issue. Of course, don't take anything from the property or don't damage the properties. Leave it as you found it and follow showing instructions. Focus on the home's potential. This is what can and cannot be changed. People say, I want to change this, I want to change that when I buy it, but some of the things structurally might not be able to change. Those are things that you might want to talk about, and you might not know that. You might have to get information from the inspector or builder or somebody. And make sure you check the surroundings before you arrive. You shouldn't smoke, eat, of course, use the bathrooms or sit on the furniture unless it's okay. If you're going to use a bathroom, I'll make sure that you get a permission from the seller, or you at least have to ask, okay? And maybe you name an informal name for a home to help buyers remember. Because in my rule usually is when it comes to showing a house, I only show, if there are local clients, I try not to show more than 4 houses a day. Because if you show more than 4 houses a day, the buyer becomes very confused and they start creating the house that doesn't exist, putting things together in each house. In the United States, these are the things that you have to remember. What is usually the most important part of the house? And because this is very generalizing, but not necessarily that's the way, what is the most important part for the male in the house? What does man look for in the United States? Most of the time, the most important part for the male is number 1, the garage, to put your car in, or you have a space to create a workshop or shop, to create a shop to do your hobby things. Is very important for the guys, a lot of times for the male. The other part is big living room or family room where they could put their big screen TV up so that they can watch their sports and other things. That's very important to the male, usually. And for female, it's a generalizing again, but what's most important is number 1 is kitchen. And number 2 is master bedroom in the United States. Their bedroom size, master bedroom, bath, the closet space, and so forth are very, very important to the female in the United States. And during the showing, I think the very important part is listen to the conversation the buyers are having with each other if there's more than one buyer, or even listen to what buyers saying about the house as well, to learn more about buyers' wants and needs. Even within the need and wants, they have a certain particular things. Each buyer is different, right? That's the during what you need to understand. How about after? Review home buyers checklist and evaluate and compare the properties. And you might want to compare the cost of ownership. That might include, because the price could be different, loan amount could be different. Maybe it's a condominium, then the property management fee could be different. Things like that. And you might want to check and see which property you want to go look again. Right? Some property they like, some property they might not like. But unfortunately, in the market that we have here in United States, we don't usually get to go see the house second time. Because house comes on the market Wednesday, Thursday, then offers, we'll have to submit the offer by Monday morning. So you only get to go see once. So we take a little bit more careful look on each house. So it's very, very hard for the buyer in the seller's market, because I cannot tell the buyer, let's go home and think about it. Then maybe you could go back and see the house again for second time. But there's been a case, I showed the house on Friday, and we go back Sunday again to see the house again to make sure. But you have to very quickly that you have to do that. Be mindful of the technology used in surveillance camera. Most of the places in the United States, they're okay to take photo for your personal use, but not to post on it. Never post photos, comments on the social media. Comments can't get back to the seller, may harm the buyer's negotiation leverage. You use it for personal use to remember it, but never ever post it to social media or other people. When you're in the house, a lot of times there is a surveillance or security camera already. So you might not want to, and a lot of the security camera and surveillance camera now records audio and video. So you might not want to say things in the house. It might become a disadvantage to you when it comes to negotiation. That's no in state of law regarding use of any recording devices. In state of Washington here, you could record video surveillance camera without a consent, without permission, but you need a permission from the person if you're recording audio. But that doesn't mean the as the seller's so security camera not recording. They might be. So those are things that you need to know. So the realtor shall not provide access to listed property on terms other than the established owner or the listing broker. In the United States, we have a lock boxes, so you don't give out the code. And you must, as a buyer agent, supervise the buyers inside the property. Think about that. Even as a listing agent, can everybody share with me? You have a certain way that you're going to show the house. I share with you some of the way that I do. I make sure that I'm closer to the door all the time. It doesn't matter if it's my friend or first people that I don't know that I'm showing the house, not knowing enough. I'm always closer to the door, make sure all the lights are off. I check all the lights are off. And also in state of Washington with our MLS, we have to leave a business card when we do the showing as well. And make sure all the doors are locked. Basically, you put it back to where you found it. And sometimes when you have a back showing, and you might be the last one, but it's always good practice to, shut the windows, turn all the lights off, make sure you lock all the doors, unless the seller instructs you not to do certain things. So those are things that you really want to remember. And what type of comments are you going to give if the buyer says, what do you think about this house, Mark? Make sure you give a very objective answer the answer should be coming from almost a reminding the buyer on the buyer checklist that they created, or the buyer's want and need list that they created. Because buyer, at the end of the day, of course, financially, but a lot of the buyers and sellers sell and buy with emotions. They're not logical. But our job is to stay logical and explain to them. Such as sometimes when we started, they said I wanted a single story home because my leg is bad, I cannot climb stairs, so I want a single story home. But they fall in love with a 2-story home. At the end of the day, buyer should buy what they want to buy, but I think it's a job to remind them, I remember buyers, we talk about buying a single-story home because your leg is bad that you cannot climb stairs anymore. But are you sure you want the single-story home? Maybe that might be the question, just to remind them. And if they say, yeah, Mark, I understand, but we still want to buy this home. So let it be. Buyer makes the choice. You don't make a choice on what buyer wants to buy. You let the buyer make the choice. Selecting homes ethically. That means a fair housing law. Offer a range of the home choices. It's the buyer's decision. You don't make a decision and say, I think this area is perfect for you, so I'm only going to show you a house in this area. Not on that area. You say, no, that area is very, very dangerous, so I don't want to show you any houses. You cannot do that in the United States because you are giving information and discriminating certain area as well. Seven federally protected class. Some states define additional protected class. We talked about that as well. Federal law prevails over state laws. Realtor must follow the law. Never discuss these topics about neighborhood with the clients. Race, ethnic composition, religious makeup, median income level, education level, school ratings, crime statistics, age breakdowns, political voting patterns, and things like that. We do not discuss about that in the United States. A buyer could make the decision based on the information that they could find. Yes, we can give let's say, a website information where they could find that information if they don't know it, but we should not be given the information to do that. This is called steering. Steering in or steering away certain neighborhood for certain buyers. There's a statement of fair housing policies in a buyer representative agreement. And it shows the example here. And I think this might be something that we include as being ethical in any market. It is the policy of my company to abide by all local, state, and federal fair housing law and not discriminate against any individual group of individuals. The agent may not lawfully disclose the racial, ethnic, or religious composition of any neighborhood community or buildings, nor whether the person with a disability are housed in any home or facility, except that agent may identify housing facility meeting needs of the disabled buyer. This is the Realtor's Code of Ethics. This is part of like a fair housing, but this is on beyond whatever it is. The realtor shall not deny equal professional service to any person. This you could have, even though state law might could be different. Reason of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, or sexual orientation and gender identity. Realtor shall not be parties to any plan or agreement to discriminate against a person or persons of the basis, race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, etc. And also, this is a new standards of practice under Article 10 is realtor must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on the race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Maybe this is something that you could use. And this came about, as you know, we had a racial conflict in the 2020 United States. You might know that. And this came in, says, you know, we cannot make any hate speech about anybody. We have to treat everybody equally. That's including in social media. So you stay away from political stands and so forth as well. These are some of the areas that might be harmful to a realtor as well. Screening. Must use objective criteria that is applied to all buyers consistently, not selectively. Steering the practice of influencing a buyer's choice of communities based upon one of the protected classes under fair housing. Must not favor or disfavor any particular demographics. The practice of deceiving buyers that could result in the loss of home equity, damage credit, or that is in violation of Federal Consumer Protection Act. That is listed on new book of the page 92. When you look at it, these are some of the questions that you could ask. What kind of people live in the neighborhood? That might be questions the realtor should not answer directly. Is this a good place to raise a family? I don't know. It's very subjective, right? Is this a safe neighborhood? What is the definition of a safe neighborhood? I don't know. It's all different. It's very subjective, right? How are the schools here? In the United States, there's enough website that they could figure out what is the best school for their kids. And each kids might be different. What's the best school for these kids? Can you show me a neighborhood with large Chinese population, Japanese population, and things like that? X populations? Is that a good thing to do? Those are the questions that you might have that you might not be able to answer. How would you respond to these questions? Maybe say, I don't know, but here, I don't know what the composition of the neighborhood is, but here's the website that you could find out the demographics of the neighborhood. You serve any areas that I would feel at home with. I don't know what that means. You need to ask. Please tell me what type of neighborhood you like to live in. What kind of people live in this neighborhood? I don't know. Here are the demographics, or you could do a neighborhood review. You could drive by it and many times of the day and figure out whether this is the right place to live or not. Do you think this property is a safe area? I don't know what safe means. In the United States, a lot of the area have a crime statistics. So I could give you the website that you could check and figure out whether this will be the neighborhood that you want to live in. So those might be the questions that you might ask. But this is the right place to take a break. So why don't we take our 10-minute break? Any questions so far? I know the fair housing might not be a new concept to you as well, but it is one of the largest largest thing that we talk about in the United States. Any question by anybody? Maybe let me ask you a question. Anybody in Cambodia, can you pick and choose who, let's say you're a property management or buyer, can you pick, if you're looking for buyer, can you pick and choose or discriminate based on the race or even age? Can you do that in Cambodia? And is that okay? Anybody could tell me?
Yes, it's just my opinion, my experience. I think we have not had such laws preventing that, even if it's so. I can say that we can do that in Cambodia.
Yeah.
It's sad, right? Or maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, in many places still like that. But in United States, as you know, United States is an immigrant country. And we have a mixed races everywhere you go. So these are things that are very important, that we don't discriminate against certain races. As you know, in United States, during COVID, a lot of Asians are targeted for discrimination. Because number one, they can't tell difference. I mean, they shouldn't do that anyway, but they, a lot of people think the Chinese people brought the COVID from China, so they're mad at them. But right now, we talk about the Russians being targeted, even in the United States, just because they're Russians. And those are not a good thing, and those are against the law in the United States. But it might not be in many countries, including, maybe Cambodia, a lot of the Asian countries, some of the European countries. European countries are very close to what United States is, but a lot of the Asian and African countries, these still exist. You could discriminate based on your color of your skin or which country you're from, so forth. And I could say that even in Japan, there's truly I see a discrimination against the foreign people, especially towards the Southeast Asian and Africans. If you're a white person, you get treated a little bit better than the, Asian person in Japan. And I think it's horrible. I'm ashamed of that being a Japanese, even though I live in the United States. But that's the reality for a lot of the countries that we have, that, we continue to evolve and we continue to make changes. Any other questions or comments? Everybody's okay? So let's take our final 10-minute break. And come back about 11:15 and we'll finish it up for the day. Okay? Let's come back about 11:15 and we'll finish up for the day. Warning. All right, let's get back. So one of the things is the gaining buyers' loyalty through the process. What are some of the things that you could do? The gaining buyer loyalty through the process, you're looking at representation agreement creates the contractual relationship, right? We talk about buyer agency agreement, buyer representation agreement. Interpersonal relationship is what builds true loyalty. You might have a contractual, but talking to them and giving them and telling them that your service is worth and your service is very good for them gives them a loyalty. And your loyalty is a two-way street, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a seller, you represent seller or the buyer, loyalty to seller. You have to be loyal to them and they have to be loyal to you. And truly in United States, buyer agency concept is a truly built on loyalty. Again, your words and action really matters. What you say and how you do, right? A lot of times we say action speakers louder than your word. So how you interact with them is very important. Strategy for gaining buyers' loyalty. How in these situations? Open house and for sale signs. Remember, one of the reasons that you do open house is, of course, to sell the house, but actually to pick up a new client, whether it's a buyer or the seller. Maybe that's one of the concepts for doing open house. Are you doing an open house to pick up a new client? Or you're just doing open house to just trying to sell that house? Maybe within your company or within your office, you might do open house for somebody else. When you're doing that, what's the reason you're doing that? How about model homes? You might be sitting on model homes or model unit on new construction site. Who are you really representing? Yeah, in legally speaking in Cambodia, you might be representing seller, but how are you going to give a impression to the buyer that you are also looking at best interest of them as well? That's the one of the new concept as we in Cambodia that we have to begin to establish for consumer protection. Also transparency of the transaction. Those are one of the two large things we as a National Association of Realtors in the United States look at, that we want to spread the message to the rest of the world so you feel very confident about the transaction that happens in different countries. We all have the same level of expertise. We all have a very similar understanding of how it works. It's going to help all of us to make more money and be more transparent, helps us to make more money in whatever the market we're in. What's the strategy of gaining buyers' loyalty through websites and print media? On the newer version, it's listed on page 95. Are you attracting much buyer, much seller, much buyer when you're doing on the website or print media? Are you being equal to everybody, or are you only particularly targeting certain people? You should market to all, right? That's the concept of a fair housing. Everybody has a right to own a home. without being discriminated. That's the realtor spirit that we have. How are you able to help out for sale by owner? FSBO, right? We talk about for sale by owner. When you do a for sale by owner, you might be more loyal to the buyer because you have the buyer, so you went to some owner that if they want to sell or not. Royalty does not necessarily come from who pays for it. Remember the auctions. What about auctions? How could buyer agent help you on the auctions? You could give them advice during auction how it is by giving them a market summary. Funny thing is, on the auction, a lot of times the people pay more than they should because that's the way auction works. How about when you have a contact from the other agents? How are you working as a buyer's agent? Or as an agent? Are you respectful to the other agents or not? And this is in United States. What's procuring costs is a concept says if there is a dispute that who actually sold the house, is who actions cause the buyer to make the purchase. Makes a difference of who gets to pay. So that might be a little bit different of the concept in Cambodia because you only have a seller's agent. By United States, we look at this and say 7 key question is when and how did introduction occur? Uninterrupted chain of events. Buyer abandoned means they quit the buyer. Second agent initiated separate series of events. Was there a second agent intrusion? Second agent aware of the actions? Original agent estranged buyer? These are the things that you look at. You want to know about procuring costs and how it works. It's listed on the new booklets of page 96 and 97. We're not going to do the exercise that's listed in the next few pages because it's very difficult to do in Zoom. Let's review the key point on Module 3. Managing a buyer's expectation can be accomplished by focusing their priorities, educating them on the market realities, building trust, and actively listening to the client. The protocol for showing properties address issues before, during, and after showings. Realtor must familiarize themselves with local, state, and federal fair housing guidelines. The 4 areas that poses danger of discrimination are screening, steering, advertising, and predatory lending, which is not too much of the part in Cambodia, but it is in United States. But I think on the fair housing issue is, regardless of what the law of your country is, I think it's a best practice for realtors to treat everybody equally without a discrimination, especially when it comes to housing. Even though our society might not be built that way, maybe we could start. We could change the movement. The equality, diversity is becoming to be a big word in many of the countries now. So maybe that's something that we need to establish. as the world gets smaller and smaller with the information and reliability on each other, right? To think about that. As the world gets smaller, maybe we look to equality, treating everybody equally might be something that we could start in the real estate industry in Cambodia. Is the US perfect? No, it's not. At least on the housing, we have a much more strict law already that we cannot discriminate people. So for now, we started the first part of the buying process. We talked about the pre-approval, right? We did the buyer orientation part. We talked about the home search. View the homes, viewing the homes, showing. When we might do the further research, check the neighborhood, amenities. So we'll start from the step 4, 5, or those are the things and on. It's something that we'll cover in next week on Monday and Tuesday as we get going. Any questions from today on anything? Doesn't have to be buyer stuff. Any questions that you might have? Anybody? Everybody's doing okay? Okay, so remember, I want to give a homework to somebody. Anybody could update me on how the market in Cambodia, or maybe even Phnom Penh and maybe different area. People could think about it and at least we'll take about first 10, 15 minutes next week to get started, is for you to update me on the Cambodia market. But that's the practice. I want everybody to practice that and to be able to, even though you might not be presenting it, I would love for you to do as a homework to be able to tell somebody about how the Cambodia market is. If I come and ask you, how is the Cambodia market? How's the market in Phnom Penh? Then you should be able to explain that. Even within a country, right? Somebody might be moving to Phnom Penh, your capital city, and they're gonna ask you, says, how's the market? Where's that, what is? So you should know that. All right, so that's the homework for everybody to kind of study and make your understand the market that you're in. It might not be whatever the city that you're coming from and joining us today. Okay, any questions, anything else? Everybody's good?
Yes, very good. Thank you very much for sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know a lot of information, and hopefully you got the new booklet, and I'll email to you the association again so they could email it out. But if you have anything else, I know we're a little bit early, but this is the right place to make a break. So if there's no other questions, enjoy your rest of your day and work hard. And we'll see you next week on Monday and Tuesday. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the good
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
You, Mark.